Have you ever been put in a timeout? Maybe for not listening to your mom or dad, or being mean to your sister or brother? Well, your timeout was nothing compared to Israel's timeout. God put Israel in a timeout for 40 years. What did they do to get a 40-year timeout? Well, Moses and the Israelites had lots of new rules from God about how to be his holy nation. They knew what to do and what not to do. No beard trimming, no pork eating, no lying or stealing, lots of rules. As soon as they left camp to head for the promised land, the Israelites started complaining again. It's too hot. We're tired of this weird, flaky food. They were complaining about everything. Moses told them to trust God and to be patient. After all, they were headed to the land God had promised them. They would soon have their own land and be God's holy nation. Just when Moses thought he couldn't take their complaining any longer, they finally reached the promised land, a land called Canaan. There was one small problem, though. There were already people living in Canaan. So Moses sent 12 spies into the land to check it out. Do you know what a spy is? It's someone who sneaks around gathering information without being noticed. The 12 spies wandered all over Canaan, taking notes. Was there food? Fresh water? Were there trees? How many people lived there? Were they big people or little people? Then they came back to Moses and the Israelites and told them what they saw. The promised land was amazing. They saw grapes, huge, delicious grapes. They saw lots of fruit trees. They saw good land for growing crops with clean, fresh water running in brooks and streams. They saw that the land God promised them was an amazing, wonderful place to live. But they also saw the people who lived there. They looked big. They looked strong. They looked mean. What if they attacked the Israelites? Would the Israelites win or lose? Moses asked the spies what the Israelites should do. 2 of the spies reminded the Israelites that this was the land God promised. Even though the people looked big, God was bigger. If they had to fight for the land, God would fight with them, and they would win. All they had to do was trust God. But the other 10 spies were scared. The people are just too big, they said. They're too strong, they said. If we have to fight them, we will lose. Who should the Israelites listen to? The 2 spies who trusted God, or the 10 spies who were so scared they wanted to run away? Who would you listen to? The Israelites listened to the scared spies. They forgot all the things God had done to bring them out of Egypt. They forgot that He was always with them and that He was bigger than anyone or anything they could ever face. They forgot about God. They said, "We're not going into that land. Let's go back to Egypt." Moses couldn't believe what he was hearing. The children of Israel, God's friends, were turning their backs on God. "Because you don't trust me, none of you will go into the land I promised," God said. "Someday your children will go in, but you will not." God wanted the Israelites to trust Him. He wanted them to remember that He loved them very much and that they didn't need to be afraid because He was always with them. The Israelites forgot all of these things, and so God put them in a timeout for 40 years. Remember the promises God made to Abraham? Your kids will become a great nation. They will have their own land, and from your family will come a blessing for the whole world. It had been nearly 500 years since God made those promises, and only the first one had come true, sort of. Abraham's family had grown to be a nation, the Israelites, but they still didn't have their own land, and the blessing for the whole world was still unclear. The Israelites had disobeyed God time and time again, so God put them in a timeout until they were ready to obey Him. Now Israel's long time out was finally over, and it was time to enter the Promised Land once again. Moses, their leader, gave a long speech reminding the Israelite kids, who were now grown-ups, of everything God had done for them and all the laws He had given them. Everyone said, "Yes, we're going to trust God for sure this time." And then Moses walked up on top of a mountain and died. Yep, he died. He got to see the promised land from the top of the mountain, but because he had disobeyed God too, he never got to go in. Instead, God chose Joshua to be Israel's new leader. Joshua was a man who trusted God. So Joshua led all the Israelites across the Jordan River and into Canaan, the promised land. Of course, they weren't alone in Canaan. Just as soon as they crossed the river, they ran into a city, a pretty big one. It was called Jericho, and it had big, strong walls and big, strong people who did not want the Israelites moving into Canaan. Joshua knew God was giving them this land, but the people of Jericho didn't care about Israel's God. They were ready to fight the Israelites to stop them from going any further. The people of Jericho were going to stay in Canaan, and as long as they were safe behind their big, strong walls, there was nothing the Israelites could do about it. Then God gave Joshua some very strange instructions. March around the city one time each day for 6 days, God said. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, and have your priests blow horns. When the horn blows, have everyone yell, and the walls of the city will fall down. Well, that's weird, Joshua might have thought. March around a city for 6 days? Then blow horns and yell, and these big strong walls will just fall down? Because we yelled at them? Joshua trusted God, but did he trust God this much? What if he had Israel follow God's instructions and nothing happened? They'd all be pretty mad at Joshua. They probably wouldn't want him to be their leader anymore. They might even want to kill him if the people of Jericho didn't kill him first. What should Joshua do? What would you do? Joshua remembered how God had saved the Israelites, including him, from slavery in Egypt. He was there when God fed them in the desert. Plus, God had told Joshua that he already had given Jericho to him. Doubt God? Not Joshua. He had confidence in his big, strong God. Joshua led the Israelites as they marched around Jericho for 6 days. On the 7th day, he had them blow horns and yell, just like God said, and the walls fell down. The Israelites got to enter the Promised Land, and Joshua added this story to all the stories of an amazing God who could be trusted, no matter what.